in San Diego. For those of you who don't know, this is Wolfe. Fantastic list of achievements, including, a world championship title. His opponent, James, has been on the top stage multiple times across worlds, internationals. He knows how to win the big tournaments. And the team's kind of two very different schools of thought here. The Dondozo Tatsuguri, rounded out with some partners to help it out and enable that strategy for Wolfe. And James going with kind of the good stuff that people have been looking and leaning to. I think this is a much more refined version than where we started when the ladder dropped a few weeks ago. Still got a golden go that is going to cause a lot of problems, though.
Players send out the combination, have a great time, and if you just kind of get stomped where they weren't able to set up the game well enough before sending out the combination of Pokemon.
It's definitely not the easiest situation to navigate, but the leads are taking the field here in San Diego for our top 32 match. It's going to be Dondozo and Annihilate over on the side of Wolfe, and James leading things off with the Amoonguss and the Talonflame. So obviously the Dondozo not partnered up with the Tatsuguri just yet, but it is a pretty easy position to pivot into with the Annihilate. Of course, Talonflame could try and answer that a little bit, but it's still going to have to be very careful and wants to try and get in that Tailwind as well. With the Gale Wing still active, the Talonflame is desperate to try and do as much as it can. The Amoonguss can start pulling attacks away, can start causing some problems with the Rage Powder, but how many of those can it take? Will it be able to keep things going, or maybe could just try and work in the classic Spore?
Yeah, both have a ton of options here with redirection and the threat of either bringing up both of these Pokemon that combine or having neither of them out. And Wolfe choosing to play conservatively here, not trying to all in just yet.
Yeah, Talonflame starting the turn off with the Protect, so trying to see a little bit of what is going on for Wolfe's side of the field, and he's following it up with a Protect on the Amoonguss as well, so maybe waiting for him to switch around a little bit and see where the targeting is going. The Dondozo will Wave Crash into the Talonflame, but the Protect will keep it safe on this turn. So a free switch from Annihilate to Sylveon.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wise turn one, though, right? I mean, Wolfe, with this open team sheet, James knows that Annihilate's holding a Choice Scarf, so just using the double Protect, scout out what move it locks into. Wolfe instead choosing not to lock into a move, not giving James the advantage of getting to face down a choiced Pokemon where he knows it's going to do, pivoting instead. I think a nice neutral move for Wolfe, where I think his positioning's sort of slightly worse here, but now without the threat of being punished quite as easily.
It's definitely a nice turn for both players. They got really what they wanted, right? A nice, honest turn two, where they've got a little bit more of what they want. Of course, James doesn't have access to the Protects, but that's not going to be the end of the world. The Talonflame will leave, so a little bit scared of what it saw in that last turn. I think Wave Crash is definitely a concern. As Taurus comes in, the Paldean Taurus, of course, being able to land an Intimidate here. This is going to be the Aqua Breed. You can tell it by the mane there. As Dondozo's Wave Crash will go into that slot, and that is definitely not the kind of move that you want to see. Dondozo takes a little chunk in recoil. Sylveon of Hyper Voice, though, and that will follow up on the Taurus. So yes, you defended yourself from the Wave Crash, but yeah, you're still a fighting type, and that is going to hurt a lot. It's just the Amoonguss left. There is, of course, the Throat Spray to activate over on the Sylveon as well, so becoming more of a threat in the following turn. And Amoonguss does land its Spore, and so that is going to be able to slow the Dondozo down by putting it to sleep.
Yeah, pretty interesting turn there. I was just about to say, the Sylveon, it gets onto the field for free, but it's facing down two Pokemon to resist Fairy type attacks, which is not a great Pokemon, or not a great situation to be in when you're a Pokemon so reliant on that Pixelate ability. But catches Taurus in the switch, it's a great knockout. But Dondozo being asleep is a real problem, right? Where, there's not a whole lot of damage threat coming in the other side yet to burn down this Dondozo, but when your team is so focused around one Pokemon, right? I'm sure on James' side, he's very happy to get that asleep. All right, I know at least there's one more turn that's not going to do anything, and it's not super likely he's going to send out that combination now, so maybe he can wear that down before it gets all those stat boosts.
That would definitely be helpful. But here is the Talonflame going with the Terra type flying, making sure that those Brave Birds do way more damage than is expected. And this may be a Pokemon picking up some of that slack a little bit, making sure that it is able to land a lot of damage. I mean, the Dondozo's asleep. You want to start getting that down. The Brave Bird, though, will head towards that Sylveon, which wisely protects itself, so not going to get the benefit of that. Dondozo remains asleep, obviously, still has to take that mandatory turn. And then Amoonguss going with the Pollen Puff. So making sure this Talonflame is, trying to be helped out, but I don't think that turn worked quite as James was expecting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a safe move, right, where, trying to keep the Talonflame healthy. I think we can deal a lot of damage to all of the Pokemon that Wolfe has selected for this game. So, it makes sense where Talonflame, if it had hit that Brave Bird, even if Sylveon didn't do very much damage back, the recoil damage is still a problem, right? Keep it healthy, potentially keep that Gale Wings active, but it's going to stay active either way because it wasn't able to take any damage.
Yeah, well, it's still a valid move. Here it comes, it's Tatsugiri, though, so it's time to see the Commander ability activate. Of course, the Dondozo is still asleep, but, if it wakes up, it's already had one of its turns. If it wakes up, it could swing things around, and you still get the stat boost, right? You're going to get caught by the Brave Bird.
Yeah, and if he targeted that Tatsugiri slot, or what was previously the Sylveon slot, that will miss this turn, so sneaky move by Wolfe if you can get away with it.
Let's see how this one goes. It's going to be another switch, this time the Amoonguss on James's side, leaving the field in place of the Hydreigon. So, yes, there was a Sylveon there, so probably feeling pretty good about that one as Talonflame goes for the Brave Bird, and it is going to miss. It's gone and hidden inside the Dondozo, but the Dondozo gets away with just ticking through another turn of sleep. That is a fantastic turn for Wolfe.
Yeah, sneaky play there. Tatsugiri gets on the field just for a second there, long enough to redirect that Brave Bird. It's a risky move where, you don't want to get your Dondozo chunked too easily, but he's done a good job here where it's been asleep for 2 turns, hasn't taken any damage.
Yeah, well, there's the Tailwind setup from the Talonflame as Hydreigon starts showing off this focus energy strategy that a number of people have been going with. Dondozo will wake up on this turn, though, and fire off a Wave Crash, so this Talonflame is going to get really hurt by it. Not known for its bulk, doesn't even need to be landing it as a super effective hit to get the knockout, so a number of resources expended there. The big thing here is the Hydreigon is set up. Dondozo will take a little bit of recoil damage, but that, of course, is going to get healed up by that leftovers over the next couple of turns.
So this matchup is a big reason why Focus Energy Hydreigon has become such a popular set. It's definitely not the most common set, but what it's really great for is this particular situation. So, Dondozo has that 2 levels of boosted special defense from the Commander ability of Tatsugiri, and critical hits ignore defensive stat boosts. So, Hydreigon will then be able to do normal critical hit damage on this Dondozo, and also if it has to fire a second Draco Meteor, if it lowers its own special attack, critical hits ignore those too. Not a move we've seen a whole lot in the past, but very good in this particular matchup.
And there is the Protect from Dondozo, so being a little bit cautious around this one as Hydreigon fires off the Draco Meteor into that Protect, not going to get anything there, and of course the Amoonguss is going to be left sporing once again into the Tatsugiri slot, which isn't going to be able to connect either.
Yeah, it's, sneaky play. Another thing to keep in mind here, if this Hydreigon is able to knock out Dondozo immediately, then Amoonguss can spore Tatsugiri for real, but not going to happen there.
Yeah, well, the Hydreigon will fire off the Draco Meteor and get the critical hit. There, of course, is the drop to the special attack of the Hydreigon, but it's done exactly what this set is designed to do, getting those monstrous knockouts. And this is the turn he wanted last time, right? Where the Tatsugiri didn't select a move, and guess what? It just gets spored. So a fantastic showing of how this Hydreigon had really come to the fore. And one of the big threats on this team removed right away from James. It's now over to the rest of the team. The Sylveon is certainly going to be problematic, as this is the last pairing that James has access to. He needs to put the work in with this pair.
Yeah, I think he'd be much more excited on the Wolf side if this was last generation, but we still have terrestrialization to worry about here, right? That Sylveon versus Hydreigon matchup. Right now it's looking pretty good from Wolf's side of the field, but, it could change up. Both these Pokemon capable of terrestrializing to types that actually maintain the current balance of types here, where the Sylveon could regain its advantage potentially, but both sides playing cautiously for now.
Well, of course, the Flying Terror used by James earlier, limiting him on that one a little bit, as the critical hit will land onto the Tatsugiri. So, being able to cause those problems and try and fish for that knockout. Tatsugiri's still asleep, has to take that mandatory turn that we always talk about, and so being able to cause problems that way. And Sylveon getting caught with the Spore, but protecting itself. So kind of free damage there, I think, for James. It's safe to say, the Hydreigon just weaving in that attack onto the Tatsugiri. Why not, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal here, too, where, the Tatsugiri, you don't really think of it as the more threatening half of that duo, but, it actually does have very high special attack. So, a Draco Meteor and Icy Wind here could do a pretty serious amount of damage, and this is already a pretty tenuous situation for James. Like you mentioned, I forgot that terrestrialization had been used already, which is a pretty big element in this matchup now, where you don't want to end up with solo Amoonguss, so he's going to have to find a way to make some things happen here.
Well, there's the Hyper Voice from the Sylveon, of course, handling into the Protect. I think James has to keep that Hydreigon safe on this one, and the Amoonguss takes it, yes, very well. The Amoonguss will land that Spore now into the Sylveon, which is the threat, and now he's got a little bit of wiggle room, something to play with, see if he can sweep through the rest of this game with the Hydreigon. Of course, the Annihilate also causes some problems for the Hydreigon when you can't switch out of the Dark typing that causes some of those problems. So saving that for late has worked out really well. And of course, there is going to be the speed advantage.
Oh, this is so good too. I mean, that terrestrialization is going to make a big difference in this game with the becoming a grass type here. This Annihilate is going to be able to ignore Rage Powder if it's used. So Wolfe can choose to Final Gambit either Pokemon, and there's not really anything James can do to make that choice for him the way you might normally with the Amoonguss.
And that is really smart team building that is coming to the fore. And Annihilate's just going to take out the big threat, the Hydreigon, with the Final Gambit. Of course, Annihilate will knock itself out, but the only thing dealing damage over on James's side of the field is now removed from play. So a trade you are very willing to take if you are Wolfe.
Yeah, the only attacking move, which I think you gotta put air quotes on, is Pollen Puff for Amoonguss. Technically a damage-dealing move, but primarily used to heal ally Pokemon. None of those left to heal. Amoonguss has successfully put all of the Pokemon on Wolfe's side of the field to sleep, so we might have a couple of slow turns here, but Amoonguss has got a long way to go.
And what if Amoonguss just sneaks in a little focus energy and gets those critical hits?
Well, Tatsugiri about done with this. He can wake up, use that Draco Meteor, and that is a bunch of damage down.
Yeah, that is Amoonguss looking pretty low. Oh, no. Yeah, Wolfe pairing has decided that this game is going to be over in the following turn. Both the Sylveon and the Tatsugiri are waking up. The Pollen Puff will connect with the Tatsugiri. It does get the critical hit, but it's still very far away from where it needs to be a late-game threat in this one, as James does throw in the towel, realizing Amoonguss isn't going to be able to do it.
Yeah, it's a fantastic game one there where you went back and forth a little bit, but really well-played game by Wolfe. I think a few things to keep in mind in that game. We've kind of seen this happen a lot with these Dondozo teams, where we see the Pokemon where its job is to deal with Dondozo. Often it succeeds, and then it kind of doesn't matter that much, it feels like, where it's really hard not to just tunnel Dondozo in this matchup, but you don't win just by knocking it out, right? You still got to get the other three.
Being able to turn to the grass type is actually kind of one of my favorites so far, and people do make the joke that anything can be your favorite grass type now if you want to. It's something we've struggled with for a little while. If you're James, yeah, we do have to look at the team and think, what was missing? Okay, no Golden Go, no Glamora. Kind of makes sense. I mean, we have to address the Paldean Taurus. I know the guys were hyping it up at the beginning of the day, and yes, it has had a fantastic showing here in San Diego. But that was not the time for it. And Wolfe made that fantastic play where he just really covers and calls for it and says, you know what, I think at some point, it's going to come in. I'd like to wave crash your Talonflame, please, but if you do try and do the cheeky switch to your water type and get the Intimidate, well, guess what? I've got a partner for that. There is already an adaptation on the field as we see James's lead. It is going to be the Glamora and the Talonflame, so saving something a little bit for later. And the Dondozo Annihilate once again for Wolfe.
Yes, I'm not surprised to see Glamora. I think that it was likely we're going to see one of it in Golden Go, just because, it wound up being that James had a lot of focus on Wolfe's Dondozo, but it was Sylveon who kind of carried that first game, and now a Pokemon with a type advantage against the Sylveon, but this Pokemon can't protect, so James can't use the same strategy he did at the beginning of the first game.
No, it has to be very smart, as the Amoonguss just makes an appearance right away and being switched in for the Glamora. The Talonflame protecting once again, so back to what you were saying in game number one, find out what this is getting locked into. The Dondozo protects, and of course the Annihilate going to go really fast with this Choice Scarf. It's just going to Final Gambit. That is going to land right on the Amoonguss, and that is not going to be enough. That is just short. Of course, it takes the exact number from Annihilate's health and swaps, basically does that amount of damage to the opposing Pokemon. Yeah, not there in this one, falling short by a meager amount of health, and he's given up the Annihilate for free here.
Yeah, it's a tricky spot, right? One thing to keep in mind, Amoonguss always said the Regenerator ability can get out of battle, at least get to a sort of reasonable amount of health. It is nice to get that damage down where Amoonguss is annoying for this team, but, Sylveon now going to at some point have to deal with Glamora. It's likely that it's going to be much more difficult for Sylveon to be the contributor it was in the first game. We've already seen 3 Pokemon that resist fairy type attacks, so simply James I'm not going to lose to that Pokemon twice. This time it's probably going to have to be Dondozo. I think it's fairly likely that the Pokemon we have not seen on James' side of the field is that Hydreigon,
yep.
Which would check the Dondozo. So I think if you're James, you're much happier about the way the beginning of this game is played out. Nice move there to have Amoonguss take all that damage like it was not able to do the first game.
It definitely bought him a lot of time, and cost Wolfe one of his Pokemon. That is definitely a bit of a misstep. I don't know who was expecting, but the manual switch out, Sylveon leaving the field. This isn't really the ball position it wants, and it is all about the Dondozo right now. So get in there, be the commander, boost all of those stats right up. It's going to be the attacks first, then the speed, then of course the defenses, just to make sure it takes hits even better. This is something that is going to be a bit of a mammoth to deal with, a bit of a problem, but it is going to be one of those terrestrializations coming through nice and early. It is the Talonflame once again. He's going back to the flying one, so really committed to the bit on that one, trying to see if, he can land the Brave Bird. The big thing here, though, is he did, of course, see that Protect in the previous turn, and he's going to be able to make sure that Talonflame is getting out of this turn pretty well. Talonflame will Brave Bird. Going into the Tatsuguri, not expecting that switch in again. Wolfe's done this twice to him now.
Yeah, Tatsugiri is putting in some work here where, we actually get to see it do some attacks for once, but it just mitigating damage instead. Reduce that speed boost on Dondozo's side, which could be a big deal here. Talonflame choosing to go for the Brave Bird there rather than Tailwind, but there's certainly a situation where that could make a big difference as Dondozo now with 3 levels of increased speed.
Yeah, this Dondozo is absolutely monstrous. It's setting itself up very nicely. Of course, it has access to the Order Up, and really crucially, once again, James doesn't have access to Terrastalize the Hydreigon, which would have been the big play for me, being able to use that type. Of course, it's known, it's on the team sheet, but what really can be done about it at that point? And I think maybe just going all in on that turn is really, really big.
An important thing to keep in mind here, too, Order Up's stat boost does go through Protect, so it's a pretty safe target here from Wolfe. Not that concerned about the Talonflame, and can use this Order Up to boost speed again. This is why players have chosen to switch the forms of their Tatsugiri instead of getting that attack boost, getting speed instead, because simply not being hit is often better than doing more damage.
Well, if he's serving it up, it goes towards the Hydreigon, it's returned to the kitchen of the Dondozo's mouth, and he still gets the benefit.
Yeah, you didn't cook it right.
Yeah. Anyway, Talonflame is still going to be able to Brave Bird because of the Gale Wings, and yeah, that is just not the damage that you want to see. I mean, that is, of course, going in after the Commander ability. I don't know if that Terra was going to be worth it. The Hydreigon will follow up just with the Draco Meteor. The Tailwind's still working out for it there, but of course, with no focus energy, it is going to cause a number of problems, and in response, it just gets caught with a pretty nasty Order Up, super effective hit. Nothing you can do about that one. Once again, Dondozo's speed rising, getting a little bit of recovery. This is definitely the flawless execution of the Dondozo team from Wolfe right here. There's 2 Pokemon remaining on James's side. It's the Talonflame and the Glamora. The Glamora, of course, wants to fight that Sylveon at some point. That's what it's bought for. But it's staring down a pretty terrifying Dondozo. A mad amount of speed at this point after all the Order Ups. Just going to be able to maybe try and get a little bit of leftover recovery here. I really don't know how James gets away from this Pokemon, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big deal where I think the damage from Brave Bird, it would have been close. I don't think quite would have got it, but, if Dondozo can survive another turn here, it's very likely to pick up a knockout on whichever of these Pokemon it would like to. The Glamora can't Protect, so if he wants to take care of that and then remove it for Sylveon, that's an option. Otherwise, I mean, these Brave Birds hurt, so it would be an option to take out the Talonflame too.
Yeah, the Brave Bird will be connecting into that Dondozo, but not enough to get that knockout. Of course, probably having to fish for a critical hit at that point. Talonflame losing a bit more of its health, making sure Dondozo, though, will get to Wave Crash, and that is going to be an easy knockout on the Glamora. Absolutely no nonsense there. It can't Protect. It does carry the choice specs, and yeah, it gets to use Toxic Debris, but it's very late in the game. And of course, the Dondozo will fall to the recoil. That is big, but really, just facing down this Talonflame that is going to wear itself down is certainly going to be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, an important thing to keep in mind, too, is that, once again, that Terrestrialization is kind of going to work against it here, where it lost its resistance to Hyper Voice, which could be really critical in this matchup, where Dondozo kind of feigns a hero there, right, where it needed to do a lot, and it did. This Talonflame already very weakened, no longer has the resistance it normally has to these Pokemon's attacks. It's going to need something very strange to happen to get through this one. The poison will tick on Sylveon here at least, with the Protect going in from Talonflame, but boy, this is a big deficit for James to try to come back from.
At some point you've got to hit Brave Bird, though, and in exchange for Brave Birding, you're losing chunks of your health, and that's great. The Wave Crash does the same for Dondozo, and that's fine when you've still got another, the Tatsugiri to come back out, and the Sylveon to switch in. Fantastic news on that front, but This is going to be, at some point, a single target Hyper Voice. We'll see if it does get the knockout here. That's what it was fishing for earlier, so it doesn't quite get there and takes a massive amount in recoil. It's so low. The life orb adding to it as well. Tatsugiri, I think it's going to get the knockout itself with the icy wind. So, you know, Dondozo dies a hero, but Tatsugiri gets to wrap it up for Wolfe here in top 32.
It feels like a very lore-appropriate Tatsugiri win, where, you know, it dodges some attacks. It's kind of like, you know, pokes things at the end once they've already been weakened by its friends. The famously smart but cowardly Pokemon there, doing it its own way.
Yeah.